Jocko, I really appreciate you making time for this conversation. Very, very much. Jocko, how is everything in your world?
Man, everything in my world is moving really, really fast as usual.
Hey, per usual. All right, so let me ask you about that. If everything's moving really, really fast in your world, you're prepped for that, you're prepared for that. What about the rest of us? If everything is moving too fast, how do we approach that? How do we slow that down? How do we get our head around it?
Yep. Well, as you know, Jim, I wrote a few books about this, and the law of combat leadership that this calls for is prioritize and execute. And what that means is when you have a lot of things going on, and a lot of them seem like priorities, you've got to decide what the biggest priority is, and then focus your efforts on that and your resources on that. Once you get that problem or that issue under control, you move on to the next biggest one, and so on down the line. And the other thing is, the other laws of combat, decentralized command. What can you actually take off your plate and delegate to someone else? That's a really powerful thing to help simplify what's going on in your world as well.
All right, so you mentioned these books, Jocko, that you've written, and I want to get into it, but you said something recently that I found really, really interesting and really, really powerful. I think it falls under the category, Jocko, of simple but not easy. But, and I think it applies to almost every last one of us, you said this, quote, you can decide who you want to become and you can become that person. That to me is really, really powerful, but what is the protocol? What is the process for becoming the person you want to become?
Yeah, there's a bunch of little things that go into this, but I would say the most important thing is the very first is actually doing what you are saying right now, which is deciding who it is you want to be. Look, if you get in your car and you start driving and you don't know where you're going, where are you going to end up? You don't know. You could end up in the desert. You could end up in the mountains. You could end up in the ocean. You could end up in a car wreck. You could end up in a terrible neighborhood. So you want to figure out exactly where it is you want to go. And then once you've done that, then what you have to do is figure out what course you're going to take to get there. And what that looks like in life is what steps are you going to have to take on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly situation to get where you want to go. So you got to come up with a plan, then you got to drive that plan.
So, Jocko, when we talk about books, like when I think about you and when I think about what you teach and when I think about how you lead and what you represent, I always start with the book, Discipline Equals Freedom. You wrote this book back in 2018. I've always found it to be one of the most impactful books that I've ever read. So let's talk discipline for a moment. Is discipline innate or is discipline a choice?
Discipline is definitely a choice. Now, listen, there are some people that they look from the outside like they're going to be more disciplined or they have some natural gift for discipline. And what it is, they've actually decided what it is that they want to be, where they want to go. And when you really think about where you want to go and you think about how bad you want to get there, that discipline comes pretty easily. If you're getting ready to run a marathon and you want to get a certain get a certain time and you know what that takes to get there, getting up out of bed is a lot easier. Now, if you sign up for a marathon, but it's something that you don't really do, and maybe you're doing it because one of your buddies, they signed up for it, they kind of talked you into it, in the last minute you said, okay, discipline does not come easy then. But the guy that actually wants to do it and make it happen and wants to get that time, discipline comes a lot easier. So once again, it goes back to plotting out your course and trying to figure out where it is you want to be.
So we just talking about reverse engineering our life. We just decide where we want to go and figure out how to get there and just do it. Is it as simple as that?
Well, as you mentioned, it's simple, not easy, because there will be times where despite the deep desire you have to get a good marathon time or gain weight or lose weight or achieve some goal with your work, there's going to be days where you wake up in the morning and the grind will get to you. And that's when it's good to transfer your vision from what's right in front of you. Like the grind seems really long right now. Think about, okay, but wait a second. Why am I doing this? Oh yeah, that's right. I had this long-term goal and it's something that I truly want to achieve. So I need to power through today.
All right, so back to discipline equals freedom. You've talked about this. This is really interesting. In order to have freedom in your life, you have to have discipline. But, Jocko, those two things sound counterintuitive, but are they really?
Well, yes, they really are counterintuitive because everybody thinks, hey, I want to do whatever I want. I want freedom. But if you live like that, if you live just doing whatever you feel at the moment, you'll end up a slave. You'll end up a slave to, whatever terrible food you like. Maybe you end up a slave to alcohol or drugs. Maybe you end up a slave to a job that you don't like, but you have no choice because you didn't prepare well. Now, if you have discipline to eat right, be healthy, work out, stay away from drugs and alcohol, work hard and take mitigated risk when you're young, you can end up in a really good spot. So that discipline early on will end up in freedom later in life, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, so, John, to that point, like if you learn this early on, and you get on the path, that's great. What do you say to somebody maybe who's in their 40s, maybe even in their 50s, right? Never actually consistently got on the path, and all of a sudden now is full of regret, and their life did not work out the way they had thought, and they feel like they're out of time. What do you say to that person?
Well, first of all, at 50 years old, if you think you're out of time, you got another little wake up call, because you got another 30, maybe 40 years to go. And so how do you want to spend those next 30 or 40 years? Are you gonna continue on this downward spiral, or are you gonna take advantage of what you've got and move forward? So to me, it's never too late, and as a sports guy, we see this all the time. It's never too late to make something happen.
Jocko, you have a program called the Def Reset. All right, so is this still going on? If so, what is it, and how do people jump into it?
Yeah, so the Def Reset is something we do every January, and I have a company called Jocko Fuel. We make protein, we make energy drinks, we make supplements, and so in order to just kind of bring people together and get them focused on the Def Reset, the Def stands for discipline equals freedom, and it's a reset because listen, beginning of the year, who knows, people fall off the path during the year, and they need something kind of shock to your system and get you back in place. It's kind of like in the military going to boot camp. It's like, hey, these are the rules. This is what we're going to do, and it's a moment where a bunch of people get together and get on the path at the same time, and it happens from January 1st until January 31st. But it's a program that you can start following anytime, really. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's about waking up early. It's about making sure that you do exercise first thing in the morning. Make sure you plan your day, and then you prioritize and execute on what you're supposed to do. Eating good food, not eating junk food. Make sure you do something for your mind every day, whether that's reading or writing. And make sure, at the end of the day, you remember and are grateful for the people in your life that came before you and made sacrifices for you to have the opportunities to do the things that you do every single day. Be thankful for it.
I love that. So I'm going to ask you about Jocko Fuel. I'm going to go back to that in a minute. You mentioned waking up early. I'm just kind of following you around, Jocko, which is fun. You get up early. You get up at 4:30. I know this because you post your digital watch every single day at 4:32. Why 4:30?
You know what? That's just a habit that came from the military. I'll tell you, when I was a new guy at SEAL Team 1 back in the 90s, 1991, and there was an old Master Chief. We'd show up at work at 7 o'clock, and there was an old Master Chief that was already there. So we'd show up at 6:30, and there was an old Master Chief. He was already there. So we showed up at 6. There was an old Master Chief. He was already there. Showed up at 5:30. There was an old Master Chief. He was already there. Showed up at 5. He was already there. If we got there just before 5, we could beat him. And, that was just one of those things where now you're to work early. And being the SEAL teams, obviously, you got a lot of work to do every single day. And so a lot of times you wouldn't have any spare time whatsoever throughout the day. So anything that you wanted to do that was outside the realm of the actual job, you had to get it done before work started. And so that's what getting to work early did for me. And I was never the smartest guy. I wasn't the fastest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy. And so I had to work a little bit harder, and getting there early to work gave me that opportunity to get some more work done. And once I got out of the military, I'd been waking up early for a long time, and I just kind of stuck with it.
Jocko, I was going there next. I've heard you say that, and I love that. You've always said that. I was not the smartest guy. I was not the fastest guy. I was not the strongest guy. Yet, in other words, like what you're saying is I was not exceptional or an outlier in any one thing, yet you became a Navy SEAL. Yet you became one of the foremost authorities in this nation on leadership. Yet, and to steal a subtitle from another one of your books, you became an eminently qualified human. Jocko, if you were not exceptional in any one thing, how did you become all those things?
Just hard work. Hard work. I mean, I just woke up early. I would stay late. I would volunteer for the hard jobs. I would do those hard jobs to the best of my ability. And the first thing, got done with SEAL training, the hardest military training in the world and all that. And I show up at SEAL Team 1, and the first job I get tasked with is cleaning the bathrooms. And what did I do? Was I mad about that? Was I frustrated? No, I was like, okay, where's the cleaning supplies? Let me get after this. And that's exactly what I did. So I think just no matter what job I was ever tasked with, I just took ownership of it and did the best I could. And I think that paid off in the long run.
All right, Jocko, you've seen every kind, right? You've been around every kind. You've worked with every kind. You've taught every kind. In your experience, generally, what is the difference between those who make it through Hell Week in SEAL training and those who do not?
That's one of the most difficult questions there is, and they've been trying to figure out the answer to that question for well since Hell Week started, which was World War II is when they started doing Hell Week, and they've spent all kinds of money. They've done psychological screenings, physical screenings. They've done everything they can to try and figure out who's going to make it through, and who's not. And you know what? They cannot identify it. They just can't identify it, and I think it's because it's hard to identify what is in a person's soul. What is in a person's soul? And the question is, do you really, truly want to be there or not? Because if you don't really, truly want to do that job, then you will get cold, you will get tired, you will get wet, you will get miserable, you will get frustrated, and you will quit. But if you really want to do that job, it doesn't matter what they do to you. It doesn't matter how cold it gets. Doesn't matter how wet you are. Doesn't matter how miserable you are. You will not quit. And again, trying to read what is on someone's soul, they have not figured out how to do that yet.
Did you, and you've done a self-audit a lot, I'm sure, what was in your soul? When did you realize what was in your soul? When did you start first thinking, what is in my soul?
Jim, the only job I ever remember wanting of any kind was to be a commando and carry a machine gun. I was a little kid. I was taking corks from wine and lighting them on fire and then blackening my face. And I was wearing whatever camouflage uniforms I could find. And I was running around in the woods. And I was doing that since I could remember. And so that's really the only job that I ever really wanted. And believe me, when I turned like 13 or 14 years old and I realized that that actually was a job that I actually could go and get, man, it was like I was in heaven. Like, you're going to pay me money to go and do what I always wanted to do my whole life. So yeah, that's how I was born. And I think there's a decent amount of young men out there that's the way they are born. That's what they want to do.
So you committed. I've heard you say this, Jocko. I think this was an existing phrase, right? I don't know if this came from you or from the military way back in the day, but I've heard you say, other than death, all failure is psychological. How so? How does that work?
Yeah, that's from a old Army handbook that I covered on my podcast. Yeah, other than death, all failure is psychological. Meaning, unless you are dead, you can get up and you can keep going. You are not defeated. So that's something that when I read it, I said, oh yeah, there you go. That makes complete sense. And that's how we need to think, because what are you up against? Look, are you going to land every job that you want? Are you going to get every promotion that you want? Are you going to win every race that you enter? No, absolutely not. But as long as you're still alive, you're not defeated. So keep going.
So, Jocko, you wrote another best-selling book with your guy, Leif Babin. I love Leif, man. He's been on this podcast. Love the dude. Extreme ownership. All right, it seems self-evident. I know you've covered this stuff before, but for those who have not heard this, it's so critical. How would you define extreme ownership for those who are not familiar with it, and who and what does it apply to?
Yeah, so extreme ownership is the mindset that instead of blaming other people or other circumstances or other things when something goes wrong and things don't work out the way you want them to, instead of blaming these other things, you take ownership yourself and you figure out what you can change, what you can fix so that you're able to be successful. It's not making excuses, not blaming other people. That's what extreme ownership is. And what does it apply to? It applies to everything. It applies to everything that goes on in your life. And listen, are there circumstances that we as human beings get hit with sometimes that we truly have no control over? Absolutely. And unfortunately in the world, that's the way it works. Whether it's one of your kids getting some kind of terrible disease or someone getting in a terrible accident. I mean, there are things that we truly have no control over. And then what we have to do in those situations is take ownership of how we respond to those scenarios. What are we going to do? How are you going to overcome? How are you going to best react to what's occurred? So yes, but the majority of things we do have some level of control over. And it's shocking. It's truly shocking how often when people have things that don't go the way they want, instead of taking ownership of what went wrong, They just blame other people in business. They blame the market, or they blame the competition, or they blame their employees, or they blame their boss. I mean, they just blame everybody but themselves. And therefore, what do they change? They don't change anything. So how does the outcome change? It doesn't change at all. So in order to progress in life, we have to take ownership of what's going on ourselves.
So it's really interesting, right? Because if you're somebody who understands that and you're somebody who grasps that, it's a kick in the balls, right? It's like, wait a minute, it's all my fault. It's all on me. I'm responsible for all of these things, these choices, these decisions. Where I'm at in life is because of me. It can be a really bitter, tough thing to deal with, right? But if you get there and you sit in it and you accept it, how empowering and liberating is that?
It is truly exactly what you said. Listen, it can be that when you finally look in the mirror and you look at yourself and you say, all these problems I have at work, all these financial problems I have, all these relationship problems I have, all these physical problems that I have, these are on me. You're right. That moment can be very, very heavy, but it is also extremely liberating, because once you understand that and you accept it, now you have the power to make changes in your world. So yes, it is a heavy burden to bear, but at the same time, it is one of the most liberating things that can occur in your life. You're no longer a victim of circumstances. The world is no longer happening to you. You are happening to the world.
Mm-hmm. So, Jocko, you also remind folks, do not be, quote, the easy button. What is the easy button?
Yeah, from a leadership perspective, if you're in charge of a team and your team comes to you to ask your opinion on something or for a decision on something, and if the only thing I ever do is, you come to me and say, hey, Jim, or hey, Jocko, we got this project going on. Should we go left or right? And I say, oh, yeah, go right. And then I'm training you in that moment to come to me, and I'm going to give you the answer. And then, the next day you come to me and say, hey, we want to make this expenditure. Is it okay if we spend, $1,000 on this project? And I go, yeah, go ahead and spend $1,000. You go, okay, great. And what I'm doing is I am training you not to make decisions for yourself, but just to come to me and ask for answers. And the problem is I'm training you not to lead. So don't be the easy button. Instead, when you come to me and say, hey, Jocko, should we go left or right? I need to say, hey, Jim, what do you think? What do you think is a better decision? And we can have a conversation. And my goal will be to go with whatever decision you come up with. And we might have a discussion round. I might say, well, what are the risks of going right? And you say, well, there's not really many risks of going right. And I say, what are the risks of going left? You go, well, there's pretty significant risk over there. So what do you think we should do? Yeah, well, probably we should go right. Sounds good, Jim. Go ahead and go right. So I can develop our relationship, develop your leadership skills, increase your confidence by not being the easy button.
All right, that point, confidence. What is the best way to go about increasing confidence in anybody?
So a couple different ways to make this happen. On an individual level, the way you increase confidence is through repetition, practice, repetition, practice, repetition, study, practice. That's how you get confident. And then, from a work perspective, Jim, if you work for me and I notice that maybe your confidence isn't high on something, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in a situation where, look, I'm not going to throw a total softball at you, but I'm going to give you something that I know you can get done. And I might have to nudge you and get you to go through the project or go through the task or whatever, but you get it done. And now I go, okay, say you did good. And your confidence goes up a little bit. And now we say, I'm going to give you something a little bit more challenging. And once I put you in something a little bit more challenging, you do well. And then I can continue to increase as your confidence grows. And by the way, this can also be used for someone that's overconfident. If Jim shows up and he's really cocky, you think he can do anything, I might put you in a situation that's slightly outside your capability. And yeah, okay, you come to me and say, hey, I don't think I was quite ready for that. I own a gym, and we teach mixed martial arts at my gym, and occasionally a guy will come in and he thinks he's ready to fight. Hey, well, you want to train a little bit before you fight. No, I'm ready right now. Okay, well, let's sign the waiver, and you can go and spar some of my even some of my high level amateurs. And the guys realize really quick that they need to train a little bit more. So, and the opposite of that is when we've got guys going through a training camp to get ready for a professional fight, as the camp goes on, first of all, they're getting in better shape, their timing's getting dialed in, so they are starting to perform better. But towards the end of camp, You're not going to do something like a Shark Tank, which is a Shark Tank training for MMA is putting a fresh guy in every minute or minute and a half, and you kind of beat the guy down. Well, towards the end of camp, you're going to let, a fighter do a 5-minute round with one other guy. And by the end of camp, your fighter's in really good shape, and he kind of starts to dominate. And so his confidence increases. So that's what we're doing. We're kind of using the environment to either increase someone's confidence or maybe humble them a little bit.
Really interesting. I was going to ask you about the gym. Jocko, I know you feel extremely strongly about jiu-jitsu. Why is that, and what can it do for the individual? And I mean any individual, any lay individual.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu's it's just an amazing sport. And what's great about it is there's all kinds of things that are great about it. First of all, do you learn self-defense? Yes, you absolutely learn self-defense. It's a great form of self-defense. And people will argue about this all day long. And there is actually a greater form of self-defense, and I can tell you what it is right now, and that is running away. So, Jim, if you come up to me and you square up to me in the street and you go, "Oh, I'll beat you up." What should I do? I should just run away. You're not holding me. I can just run away from you. No problem. If you're a kickboxer and you square up to me and you're going to kick me, I can just run away. It's no problem. But if you grab a hold of me and now I can't run away anymore, now I have to know something. And the thing to know in that situation is jiu-jitsu, because what you initially learn in jiu-jitsu is how to break contact with someone and get away from them. So yes, you absolutely learn self-defense when you learn jiu-jitsu. So that's fantastic. Then on top of that, of course, you get conditioned because it's a good cardiovascular workout. You get stronger. You're using your grips. You're using muscles that you don't even know that you had. You're going to increase your flexibility. And on top of all that, your confidence is going to go up because you're now interacting with people combatively on a daily basis. And then there's a social interaction that you get when you go through hard training with people. You build good friendships. And, aside from the SEAL teams, all the friendships that I have are all from jiu-jitsu. So it's a great thing that everybody should do. And of course, that includes kids.
Really? Yeah, exactly, right? What's really interesting about that, Jocko, and I'll own this. So I've tried to train in it, and I've tried to train with professional MMA guys, and I'm not going to lie to you. My last experience with it was not good. And I bet outside of your circle that embraces it, if you take just a normal dude, like a cardio guy like me, and so I'm on the mat, and my dude's like telling me, do this, do that, do that. I'm like, you know what, I'm not comfortable. He's like, get comfortable. I'm like, I'm not comfortable. He's like, you got to get down here because if you're in the street and it goes to the ground, you are dead, my friend. Get comfortable. So I did what any normal person like me would do when he's not comfortable. I freaking quit. I didn't like doing it. So you got to push through shit you don't like, right? That's the whole point, man. That's the whole point. But do you bump up against that when people, they get it, like they watch your videos like, oh yeah, man, I want to learn that. I see the value in that. Oh, wait a minute, man. That's not what I thought it was. That's actually hard and uncomfortable. What do you tell that person?
So it's kind of like what I just talked about. If I put you in a situation that is completely overwhelming to you, chances are it's going to break your confidence and make you want to quit. So if
right,
if
exactly what happened.
Yes. So if I took you and you said, hey, I want to get stronger, and I said, okay, come in the gym, and I put 500 pounds on the squat rack, and I said, go ahead, and it crushed you and broke your back. Are you ever coming back to train again? No. If I was going to if I was going to promote you to be a leader of a team at our company, and I said, hey, here's a huge project, go figure it out, and you fail the project, are you going to want to work for me anymore? Of course not. So what you have to do with jiu-jitsu is you kind of have to, just like with any exposure therapy, I gotta increase slowly the amount of pressure that I put on you. So I'm not going to day one put you on the ground and hold you there and suffocate you. That's going to be so uncomfortable. You're not going to want to be there anymore. So I'm sorry to hear you had that experience when you started out. There's definitely better ways to go about introducing people to jiu-jitsu. Now, again, if Jim came in and said, I want to try this jiu-jitsu stuff, but I don't think it really works, and I think I could pretty much kick all your butts. Okay, let's see how that works out.
No. I ain't going there, man. That was not it. That was not it, man. I just tapped out before I tapped out. This guy, you would probably, anyway, it's me. I got to own it. I have to own it. I did not see it through. Jocko, okay, this is so great. Procrastination. I'm just jumping to the next thing really quickly. Procrastination. Does that mean, yeah, I'm going to do that in a few minutes? I'm going to do that in a few minutes. Or does procrastination actually mean something very different than I'm going to do that in a few minutes?
Yeah, unfortunately, what procrastination often means is I'm never going to do it. And, procrastinating something for 3 minutes becomes 3 hours, becomes 3 days, becomes 3 months, becomes I'm never doing it. So, yeah, and the easiest way to overcome procrastination is just go. Just go do what you're supposed to do. Don't wait, don't hesitate 1 second, go do the thing.
Hey, really quickly, what is the path? What is the path? How do you find the path? How do you stay on the path?
Yeah, the path is where you are going, and just what we opened up with, like, hey, you know what your potential is. You know where you're supposed to be. You know what's right and wrong. You know what you should bring into the world, and the things that will bring you to that place, those things are the path. And so, yes, it's waking up early. Yes, it's working out. Yes, it's being healthy. Yes, it's doing the right things for the right reasons. Yes, it's treating people with respect. Yes, it's trying to lead when it's appropriate to lead. Yes, it's being a follower when it's appropriate to follow. Yes, it's staying humble. It's all these things that we talk about all the time. And those are the behaviors that lead people to the right place in life. And that is the path of discipline.
Hey, Jocko, aside from Jocko Fuel, what kind of fuel are you personally running on? Like, in other words, what's driving you, especially in this chapter of your life right now?
For me, Jim, it's ever since going into combat and losing friends in combat, for me, that's the fuel that will continue to drive me for the rest of my life. Losing friends that were just the best guys in the world, and they gave their lives for me and you and the rest of us. They sacrificed everything, and for us not to try and squeeze everything out of life that we possibly can is a dishonor to their sacrifice, and I simply will not do that.
Jocko, you still surfing?
Oh yeah.
What do you like about that? Especially, I mean, I would imagine all those years in Coronado, man, and the surf water torture and all that. Like you want to be in the ocean. What is it about the ocean? Like, you had to
Yeah.
be in the ocean for so many years, but now you want to be in the ocean. Is that what that is?
No, you're right. And there are some people that when they get through basic SEAL training, they never want to go in the water again. And they go in because it's the job and they have to, but they would never go voluntarily into the ocean unless they are forced to. And yeah, for me, I grew up surfing in Maine, and it was cold. And that's kind of one of the things I think prepared me for basic SEAL training is just being cold, wet, and miserable as a 10-year-old kid in Maine in the fall when there's ice on the ground and you're crunching across through snow to go surfing. But, surfing is just you know, it's an interaction with nature where you don't have total control, and you're interacting with nature, and it's just a beautiful thing. I love it. I'll
You're
never
not.
stop.
Are you? Look, I went to school in Santa Barbara, where a lot of my guys surfed. You're not territorial like that. Is it? Does it get territorial down where you are among surfers? I mean, nobody's gonna mess with you, but does it get territorial in the water?
Yes, it does. That's something that people often don't expect about surfing. They
Oh
think
yeah.
it's a hippie culture where it's just peace and love. But no, there's definitely localism, and I definitely surf localized spots.
Dude, last spot, last thought. Chuck, was amazing. Maine. I never really thought of Maine and surfing. I know you have roots there. Dude, people don't know this, right? California water is cold as hell. It's really, really cold. What was the water like in Maine?
Yep, it was extremely cold, and I would surf as a little kid. I would come out of the water, and my lips would be blue, and my mom would always be worried about me. But again, that made surf torture in Southern California not quite as bad.
Chuck, one last thought, I promise you. I think I told you this once. I knew a SEAL. This is how, way, way, way back in the day, a guy by the name of Richard Makowitz. I read his book. We became very good friends. I trained with him for a while. I was the best man at his wedding. One of the first things he told me, and one of these days I'll tell you a story about how he wouldn't train me until I passed the test. And I'm like, what test? And he's like, it's a test, all right? I'm like, what test? You're going to drop me in the jungle? He's like, no, moron. I'm not going to drop you in the jungle. If you want to train with me, you come to the dojo in Santa Monica and we will have a little talk. And this guy says to me, Jocko, he says, choke me. I said, no, I don't know. No, he's like, choke me. I'm like, I'm really not comfortable. He's like, choke me, MFer. And so I wrap up on this guy, and it's the most humiliating thing ever. He's like, harder, 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 until I'm doing this as hard as I possibly can, and he hasn't changed expression. I'm like, man, what world did I just enter into? But what he told me early on was, he said, and this is long before all of social media and all these influencers. This was probably mid-90s. Take a cold shower. I'm like, why would I do that? It sounds like the worst thing ever. He goes, it will cut a toughness groove in your brain. Do it. Do it, do it, do it. And again, like jiu-jitsu, I didn't do it. I mean, do you cold shower? Do you cold shower?
I have a straight up cold plunge in my house. You know, I'm one of those guys.
For how long?
Years.
No, I mean like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
3 to 5 minutes usually.
Okay. And
Yep,
the squat
3 to
rack.
5 minutes,
And the squat rack,
39 degrees.
you're still on that squat rack, right? You're still on the squat
Still
rack.
on that.
Why, man?
Absolutely.
Why? How many years? Like a quarter of a century on the squat rack, right?
Yeah, you know, you got to use it or you lose it.
Got you. Jocko, you are the absolute best. Look, this means the world to me. Thank you very much for making time. I've wanted to do this for so long, and I appreciate you so much.
Good seeing you. Appreciate you having me on again.